Hi, welcome to another episode of Shoff Chats. I'm Justin Whitowitz, Chief Marketing and Strategy Officer at Borshoff, and I'll be our host for today's discussion. In today's episode of Shoff Chats, we have Andy Robinson, Content Strategy Consultant and owner at Hijinks Marketing, and Ryan Brock, Chief Solution Officer at Demand Jump. They're here to talk about content strategy and writing to connect humans using AI. Both of our guests own or have owned content agencies. Both are published authors of books on content strategy, and both regularly contribute to and speak at Content Marketing Institute events. Let's get to it.
Yeah.
Hey Ryan, hey Andy, how are you guys?
Good, Justin.
I am awake and alive and happy to be here, Justin.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here. Ryan, I understand that you spent the last few days in Vegas speaking at a content event there and just arrived home at 12:30 a.m. today. So really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, my brain and my liver aren't here, but the rest of me, happy to do it.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate you guys here. Looking forward to this conversation on content and using AI to connect with humans. Ryan, let's start with you. So, Chief Solution Officer at Demand Jump, you serve on its leadership team as well as leading product development. So, what are some of the conversations that you're having with your team? And just for reference for our audience, Demand Jump is a SaaS platform, a marketing SaaS platform, but it helps marketers really understand what content to write to increase first page rankings in the search engines. So, AI, a lot of conversation around AI in the content marketing space. What kind of conversations are you having with your product team, with your leadership team about how AI may come into play with your product? I know you also offer professional services. You do content strategy and content writing. So how might AI work or not work with your professional services and your product?
These are, wow, so many great questions in here. AI has been something we've been talking about probably for for exactly as long as every other organization, right? I think one of the big differences for us, because we are focused on content marketing specifically, it has been a weird ride. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but the last, 9 months, the industry has gone from generative AI equals this is a robot content writer for me, through all these different phases of, well, maybe that's not a great idea, or maybe Google says it is now, or maybe it's actually something that'll help me do other parts of my job. And I've pretty much maintained from the start that getting an AI to write content for you is both not the only and also far from the best use of that technology. Yeah. So, we've seen a lot of companies in a similar space as ours going straight for, and now we're also a generative AI platform, which is interesting to me because OpenAI literally, was it last week, or maybe even earlier this week, announced some new updates coming to the platform. Yeah. And a lot of these services that are literally just like ChatGPT with a thin layer of value added on top are kind of irrelevant now. So it's just funny how quickly the market has moved and then how quickly the tech has evolved, which has been a lot of the conversation we've been having the last 9 months or so. It's just what we know today, what we know is the landscape of AI today, it will not be the case in 2 months or 3 months. Yeah. So it's just been this exercise in figuring out, all right, now we've got a calculator basically for writers, right? Scientists have had a calculator forever. And having a calculator, giving me a calculator does not make me an astrophysicist, right? I'm an idiot with numbers, and it doesn't change even if I get a calculator. Now writers have that. We have this thing that we can use to do some of the, the tedious work for us. Yeah. But it doesn't make us immediately experts. It doesn't make our content immediately valuable. And so what we're trying to figure out is how do we enter into that space in a way that is focused on what are the boring, repetitive, rote parts of a writer's job, and how do we make those better rather than trying to replace them. Yeah,
that's great. And Andy, founder, CEO, Hijinks Marketing, content consultant, strategist, doing fractional content strategy officer work as well. So you're more on the service side, doing consulting. What are some of the conversations you're having with your clients? What are they asking you about AI when it comes to content strategy?
So my clients are kind of ranging from dipping their toe in the water to really going full force with AI. A lot of it depends on how large the organization is. So the smaller organizations are kind of looking at use cases to try to determine where they can help support their often resource constrained employees, help them be more efficient. And then some of my larger clients, they are, actively looking for platforms that they will make their official platform that they will use for their organization, that they will go all in on, that they have their legal teams reviewing because of ethical concerns and IP and all of that kind of thing. I have one client who has been experimenting with AI tools specifically for doctors, which has been interesting. So AI tools that help them write patient notes or help them write prior authorization letters, all of those tedious, like you said, things that they have to do. But there's those kinds of things are still in their infancy now with this announcement with OpenAI and their developer platform. That might make that easier for people to do, and it might speed that up. I think it will. But they're really kind of just experimenting and trying to figure out where it fits with their organization. I think they were, much like the roller coaster that Ryan was talking about the last, 9 months to a year. Everybody's kind of been in a little bit of shell shock around AI because it's been changing so fast, and trying to figure out where it fits within their organization, if it fits at all. I don't have any clients that are writing it off completely, which is good. And I teach at Butler, and I encourage my students to use it in my MBA program because it's the way of the future. They're probably already using it in some form or fashion and don't even know it.
Right.
So it's here to stay, and I think people are just still really trying to figure out where it fits, and it's going to keep changing, so they're going to have to adapt.
Yeah.
Are you finding, providing a service and as a consultant, that your clients are asking you for your point of view, an opinion, an education? You had mentioned IP and ethical concerns. Are they turning to you for advice on how to navigate those areas of AI?
I'm acting as a part of their team usually, providing insight along with their internal teams. So in that way, yes. I think with the ethical concerns, there are a number of factors that come into play. With Google Photos, for example, they have their magic eraser, magic editing kind of features, and they made it so you can't edit people's faces, and people are complaining about that. But so it's those kinds of things. It's like there's that type of ethical concerns around manipulating data and particularly imagery for for nefarious purposes. But then there's also this idea of your intellectual property, and is that being used to train other models? Is that being put out there into the universe for others to possibly use against you?
Well, like healthcare, that's a nightmare to think about. Like the most sensitive of sensitive data. Are they like cordoning off? Sorry, am I allowed to do this?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Please do.
So, what I'm interested in is, are these companies, especially the really regulated ones, like in healthcare, I don't know what experience you have with this, but, are they seeing people are having to really put a lot in, their own setups, their own models, their own splinters off of the main thing? Because, once you start throwing the HIPAA data in there, it just seems like it goes off the rails real quick.
Yeah, definitely cordoned off. And with healthcare, and particularly the instances that I've seen, there is some data that they can build in from external sources, like DSM-4 criteria from the medical, from the AMA, and those kinds of things that they can build in that help with some of what they need to do. But certainly when you add in the patient data, and do you tell your patients that you're using this, putting their data? I think that's a definite yes from me. But is everybody going to do it?
Yeah.
So you can argue that the primary, at least a primary use case for content and writing good content is to help a domain, a website, rank high in search engine rankings. And As you guys have dealt with, Google is changing its algorithm. It seems like quarterly. They're called core updates. And every time a core update is released, I know SEOs and content marketers are holding their breath. Or all my content, is my domain still going to rank? And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And it's definitely a pain point and a frustration point for a lot of content marketers. But Google has been somewhat clear. They don't get deep into their algorithm, but they have provided some guidelines in their EEAT, and I always need to remember what those stand for, but experience, expertise, authority, and trust, right? So essentially they're saying, write good content that's meaningful, that's thoughtful, that's addressing real human questions, and be a true trusted authority on that topic. Prove that your domain is an authority on that topic, a topical authority. So EAAT, writing content for those guidelines. Do you guys believe that generative AI can be a helpful resource for writing for EAT and getting Google to recognize it as the most valuable content, rewarding it with rankings?
I would say only if you're using it tactically to help you be more efficient in your process. Like, there is so much you can do to research. Like, one of my favorite things to use like GPT for is, and this is like Bush League writing, I know, so like don't take this advice, this is hack level stuff, but like I love when I've gotten like a really solid, whether it's an essay or a presentation or something like that together, and I can go out to GPT and like sort of cherry pick data that supports my argument. Like, again, not what you're supposed to be doing, but it's a lot easier to do it nowadays because I don't have to go sifting through like all of the usual suspect reports that I'm normally going after. I don't have to like scan and do finer. I just be like, hey, do you have a statistic about how marketers feel about their ad spend?
Yeah.
Like, and I'll get 2 or 3 and maybe one's useful. That kind of thing is good. Okay. But like the reason that second E was added, I believe, is that, again, if everybody has access to this, Google has to start considering other things to determine what is the best. Right. Because, what we're going to be entering into is just this echo chamber where if companies are content, marketers are content just taking what GPT puts out there. And I don't think anybody's just like copying and pasting it. And I mean, I'm sure there are people, but like the marketers that I speak to are smarter than that. Right? They're not doing that. But the extent to which you go beyond what you are given from a generative AI tool and actually make it your own, I think 100% of the rankings battle is going to happen right there.
Yeah.
And that's why I've been thinking for a long time that like bigger and bigger brands you're going to see are putting more and more stock into individual thought leader voices. Even if those people aren't writing every piece of content, even if they're just out there in the world doing their thing and can be quoted in an article, can be consulted, and can say something different, just like literally different. It doesn't have to be better, it's just different.
Yeah.
That is where a machine cannot interfere in the process. And so I think like Google realizes that if you follow that arms race to its natural conclusion, the only place they can determine what is the most helpful content on the internet is there in that gray space.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's great. Andy, any thoughts on that?
What he said. No,
What he said.
no, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
That you have to have that human intervention between kind of that what comes out of that chat GPT or whatever tool you're using and what you're putting out into the world, because it does end up sounding like a robot, the more and more we kind of use that. So I definitely think you have to have that brand personality, that brand tone of voice in there. You need to make it sound like that piece actually came from a human being.
Yep, 100%. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's like, this is a perfect storm of like any marketer out there who's like, I hate SEO content because it's so samey, and like we want to write, it's the coolest thing in the world to say still, we want to write for humans, not for the algorithm, or not for the spiders, or whatever. And like, we've already seen examples of writing for the algorithm for years. That's been around forever. Yeah. And we know it when we see it, right? It's very like keyword stuffy. We're using the same words over and over again. When I started my agency back at the beginning of my career, my first customers, my first clients were large SEO companies who at the time were investing a ton of money in the loophole that was on Vogue in like 2011, which was, hey, you want your site to rank really high? We'll do that for you. So you give us $20,000 and we'll make sure that the content on your website ranks really high. But on the backside, in the background, what they're doing is they're going to people like me, my agency, and saying, all right, we're building a brand new website all about refrigerators, and our refrigerator selling client is going to get a bunch of links from this website.
Yeah.
You're writing that website's content. So none of it matters. We don't expect a single human being to read it. It's literally there to house links back to our client's website.
Right.
And then, of course, the Panda algorithm update comes and ruins everybody's day and closes that loophole. So back to that arms race metaphor, like we've seen it forever. So today, just like copying AI content and putting it out there is the equivalent of that. It's the same thing.
Sure.
And so, like, if you're waking up in the morning and you're like, I'm going to game the system, then you're going to lose. And I think a lot of people are trying to do that with GPT and other tools like that. But a greater amount of people, I think, are trying to just make sure that they have more time to spend on what does make this piece creative.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that keywords don't matter anymore. It's that balance between, being authentic and still using the keywords so, Google has, a number of factors to rank for.
For sure.
And you talked about, most users, readers can recognize, a keyword focused article or blog versus one that has more human touch to it, telling a story, more of a narrative, the brand voice. Completely agree. So I'd love to talk about pillar-based marketing, Ryan. You wrote the book on pillar-based marketing. Pillar-based marketing, I'll let you talk about it, but essentially is a marketing methodology that really helps domains and websites rank very quickly using a keyword strategy. So evolving from those blogs that we were talking about to pillar-based marketing, talk a bit about pillar-based marketing, what it is, and can AI be a good tool to help with PBM?
Yeah, great questions. So first, because I am a co-author, I need to shout out my co-author, Toph Day. He was the co-founder of Demand Jump, now the president at Elevate Ventures. Love you, buddy. So we've got this idea with pillar-based marketing. And that idea is that traditional SEO, let's say traditional SEO in all of its trappings, the keyword lists, the metrics we use, all of this is built on something that is completely shaky. Tell me if there's any other job on the planet where like your sort of like life cycle of a project is go into a software tool, look at a list of words, okay? And that list of words is I don't know, maybe a little bit fancier than it used to be. You might be able to find like some buttons that'll help you like look for the semantically related terms that are sort of like related because of what the words are. You can expand your mind that way. And what you're really doing is you're using advertising metrics to try to determine what keywords should I choose, right? Like you're looking at a list of words. The biggest tools in the market, what they're doing is they're scraping SERPs, but primarily they're getting a lot of information about a keyword's value. Like, is this worthwhile for me to target from Google Ads? Like SEMrush says something like they capture the 500 million most popular keywords on the internet, and that's what their database is made of.
Yeah.
How do you know what's popular? Well, you have to know what's being searched. And so, like, you trust Google as the source on that. But the only place they make that information available is in their advertising platform, right? Mm-hmm. And a little bit on Google Search Console and things like that. But the point of it is, my job as an SEO for a long time was look at this list of keywords, start with terms that are related to what my client does, and then look for the terms with the right search volume, right? Build a report or a list that says, hey, if we can get high enough in the search rankings to get a big enough chunk of the traffic, this is what we stand to gain based on what we win. And you might have a few other metrics in there to help you decide if a keyword's worth including, like difficulty or competition. How tough is it to get this, or even CPC numbers that you're supposed to use to infer. Or, well, if an advertiser is willing to pay this much for it, it must be a good keyword for me to target. But at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of inference, right? The idea that, like, I'm inferring value from these metrics and this data that actually has nothing to do with organic search. The way that people are trying to learn, the way that people are behaving. It's all about Google trying to sell you an ad on something. So the premise of pillar-based marketing is that, if those metrics don't help, which they don't, as an industry, we've all just come around to, I was in the middle of a metaphor. Let's get back to that. Okay, so your job is to use all this data to figure out what you should write about. And then you do. You build a keyword list, you write your content, you target the important ones with their own articles, and then you publish it.
Yeah.
And then you wait 6, 9, 12 months. And then it's either doing well or it's not. If it's doing well, you can brag to your boss. You can say, hey, I'm driving traffic. But if you're asked why it's doing well, you really can't give an answer.
Yeah.
There's no way of knowing for sure why that one piece out of the 20 you published succeeded. And by the way, if it failed, you can't really say for sure why. You just have to keep guessing and developing content. What is missing in all of that is a direct data source that represents the actual market.
Yeah.
How does the market behave? How do real people who are looking for a solution to a problem that your business can help with tend to learn? And so for what we do is we trade out all of those metrics that are about advertising, and we look instead at the way Google recommends next steps in a search journey. The people also ask questions, the related searches on a SERP. What those represent to me are on a market level, we've looked at thousands or millions of people who have searched for this topic. One of these 12 or so recommendations we're making is, statistically speaking, probably what you're going to want to search next.
Right.
We don't know for sure. But what we end up doing is we use that source, we scrape that data, we run searches on all of the recommendations, and then we grab the recommendations that come on those pages. You do that enough, what you're able to do is actually map the total addressable market for organic traffic around any given topic in the form of a network made of terms that people search that are all being contextualized by Google as a step in a journey. So our job switches from building a list using, inferential, loosely connected metrics to how are people, statistically speaking, most likely to learn about a topic. And so we're sort of creating a standard for our data that is the real world. And so pillar-based marketing is all about understanding that Google does have a frame of reference on this stuff. And so if you swap out all those old metrics and tactics and you instead say, is writing this piece of content going to build my topical authority because it aligns with the real world?
Right.
That's the job.
Are you sure you wrote a book on this?
I know. It's very difficult. I talk a lot, but this is something that's difficult to talk about, even for someone who does it every single day, because I'm basically going into an industry that's just married to all of these ideas that, as I just talked about, don't lead to a good experience. It's still difficult. It still sucks. And I sold it for years, and so I know how hard it is. But, at the end of the day, if you're going to make a business plan, right, and you have to decide what your market is and how you're going to sell to them, you don't stop at the total addressable market. You don't stop at, I got to sell some healthcare AI tools, so there are X doctors on the planet. That's not your market, right? So building a keyword list is the same idea. I'm just going to grab this and this and this, and I hope that all the people in the world that I want to target are going to find it. This is all about just really understanding how do people talk, and that's your guiding principle. And so convincing people of something so simple being so powerful leads to me using a lot of words.
No, I love it. And
you need ChatGPT to help you condense your language.
I do use.
That's what I use it for a lot.
I use it for summary too. It's so good.
Because I can be very verbose, so I do use ChatGPT to help me be more concise.
It's a very helpful thing.
Yeah.
But I love about what you were saying though in pillar-based marketing, because the headline of this conversation today is how are we connecting with humans using content or machine learning or generative AI, and the whole methodology behind pillar-based marketing is really answering real human questions. You're pulling in that network of all the data, the keywords, the questions they're asking, and using that network to respond with the content that's literally going to answer their questions. So you're making those connections.
Yeah, and importantly, that the reason I got into all that behavior data stuff is that you can find a list of questions in any SEO tool, but it's understanding which questions are the most important.
Yeah.
And what do we even mean by important? Do we mean that it's the biggest search volume estimate from Google? Probably not, because Google's going to give you a big fat goose egg on most questions because they don't think they're going to sell you an ad, and they don't want to sell you an ad on that content. It's back to the problem with advertising metrics all over again. But if you know for sure that, a given question shows up in the people also ask section for a greater number of terms than others, right? Like again and again, as you're trying to understand how the market learns about this topic, that question keeps coming up. Now you understand that even though every single customer journey in 2023 is completely unique, we all expect everyone to cater to our context.
Yeah.
We do know that across a greater percentage of journeys, this one question's being asked. That's what we're going to choose to write about. It's not about what we're going to sell. It's not about what is going to lead immediately to a purchase. It's about generating authority.
Yeah.
And the way you do that is by giving people what they want.
Yep. And Andy, in your book, you talk a lot about creating a framework around content strategy. Mm-hmm. So clearly identifying what are the goals of the content, clearly defining your audiences that you're targeting, putting in the research to inform your content and the keywords. So how are you finding generative AI tools helpful in you or your clients using that to create that framework that you talk about in your book?
Yeah, I think, just as we've been talking about, it's not an end-all be-all. I think it's a tool that can be used to help you organize, brainstorm, come up with ideas. But AI doesn't know your customer base. They don't know, what you're trying to get across with your brand. And even if you plug that in there in your prompt, they're probably not going to get it on the nose. And so I think using generative AI in developing your strategy, you can use it here and there, but I wouldn't use it to create your entire strategy.
For sure.
I mean, when you think about it, AI, ChatGPT is kind of the ultimate gaslighter. They're going to tell you, they're going to say, you can say, build me a strategy based on these parameters.
Yeah.
And they're going to give you a strategy and they're going to say, look, this is the strategy. This is awesome. They're going to convince you that try to convince you and make you believe that that's the way you should go. But you really need to take a step back and say, look, is this really what my organization needs in my content strategy? Yeah. Look at it from all different angles. Are they, is this strategy actually going after my, target customer? Are they really, is this strategy really going to meet their needs? So again, I think you can use pieces and parts of it, of Gen AI to plug in as you're developing your strategy. Yeah. But it's certainly not something that is going to be an easy button. That can do it all for you. You have to have that insight from your own organization, from the people within your organization, from your customer base. And there's too many variables, I think, in that equation to just leave it up to an AI tool.
Yep, I like that. That's great advice.
I think it's interesting, as when I owned an agency, it was rare that I'd have any client just say, yep, your strategy's perfect from go.
Yeah.
Why is it that because an AI gives it to you, you're just oh, the AI said this, I'm going to do that? I never thought about that before, but it's wild.
One more question and we can start wrapping up, because I have Ryan here representing a SaaS product and Andy representing more of the agency services side. And specifically, what I want to talk about is a lot of times SaaS products, marketing tech, partner with an agency and vice versa. And agencies will use that product to create whole new service lines based on the output of that product, the data, the insights in that product. HubSpot marketing automation, demand jump, content marketing. There's hundreds of marketing tech products out there. And in a way, both the agency and the tech product are betting on each other, right? The agency is betting on the tech partner to be high quality, up to date, reliable, innovative, and differentiating, so that the service the agency's building off that product differentiates them and adds value to their clients. And on the other end, the tech product is betting on the agency to be experts in the product, to be knowledgeable about it, to know how to implement it, to know how to resell it, so the tech product is making money, right? So there's both groups are betting on each other to be successful, and I know both of you have experience on both sides. So talk to us and our audience, and how do you guys go about finding the right partner to build a service on, and from the product side to find the right partner who's truly going to embrace your product and implement it in its day to day?
So I have implemented my fair share of SaaS products, both as an agency owner, but also in-house with a large company. And so I think you're exactly right. I think from an agency owner perspective, I always prefer when a client brings me in prior to implementation, because then I have a greater voice in saying how that implementation works, and possibly picking the right platform, because I've been able to see so many platforms in my day. I know which ones will work best for that particular organization, and I also know which SaaS companies will work for them. Not the technology themselves, but the services and the people. I know which SaaS companies have good customer service managers that will provide the training, that will do all those things. So I think you're completely right that that relationship needs to be built between the SaaS organization, the SaaS companies, and their agency partners who are possibly doing those implementations with their clients, because things can go wrong, and you need to be able to. I think one of the benefits having now being on the agency side versus being in-house for so many years is I feel like I have a little bit more of a stronger voice when it comes to implementation of software, because I can say things that as an agency person, a consultant, that I wouldn't normally say as an employee, that are maybe a little bit rough or not confrontational, but that I can make the hard decisions and I can make the hard calls when it comes to dealing with a SaaS vendor.
Right. Because my job is just to bully you. No, I think I've been on both sides of this for a long time, and I think here I don't remember if you asked me for my advice here, but this is how I'm going to frame my response to your question.
Awesome.
My advice, whether you're on the SaaS side or the agency side, like it really doesn't matter, is be very, very clear about why you're teaming up with this organization. Like, understand, talk to them, be explicit. What are your strengths? Who are you? Like, what do you bring that nobody else is going to bring? Knowing that is half the battle. Believing that is the other half the battle. And it sounds really specific, but I'm telling you, over the years, like, the most common problem I've seen is, let's say an agency is working with a SaaS company, not necessarily mine, this is hypothetical, and they ask them to do something that's not in their wheelhouse, and the SaaS company says, yes, our team can technically do that for you if you need us to, but that's not where we are superheroes, right? That's not our strength. And then, both sides feel like they need to move forward with that situation. Maybe the agency pushes for it or whatever. It's not good, like that's where things start fracturing, and it's the same on the other side. If I'm someone who's relying on like a tech vendor, if I know what to expect from them and I know what to ask of them, it's a clearer engagement. There's been times over the years where I've worked with, let's say, an email marketing platform, and I chose them over another one because I know that their strength is they're going to remember our conversations.
Right.
That's it. That's all it is, right? But like, I don't go to them asking for things that I know aren't their strength. I go asking for things that are.
Yeah, that's good
So
advice.
viewing each relationship like that as just another tool in your tool belt, I think is really important. Not that agency owners are tools, mind you. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I was one for a long time. But just being clear on expectations is like the most important thing.
And on the flip side of that, I have seen several instances where you go through the RFP process, you're looking at all these SaaS vendors, they do their wonderful demos, we can do all of these things, and then when it gets to the nitty gritty of it, you sign with them and they're like, oh, we can't really do that. We can't do that integration. We're just still working on it. So having somebody who has experience with those platforms, like an agency person who's dealt with a lot of these platforms, you can say, I'm pretty sure that they can't do that yet. They're just not that you would do that, but right. But some vendors will. They want to. Everybody wants to do this. It's human nature. They want to show their best side. They want to say we can do all of the things. But being able to critically look at that demo and their what their offering is, and saying, can you really do that? Particularly if it's an important feature or functionality that you're going to rely on during implementation.
And just don't accept anything other than an emphatic yes, right? Like it's we can do that. No, like that. It's an automatic.
It's a tell. Yeah.
Period.
Well, guys, awesome conversation. Thank you guys so much for being here. I know that our audience has learned a lot from both of you. Really appreciate it. So to our audience, thank you all for tuning in today, whether you're listening or you're viewing. Please check out all of our social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can see previous and upcoming Shoff Chat episodes. And before we go, I just want to plug your books really quick. Ryan, PillarBased Marketing, a data-driven methodology for SEO and content that actually works. Where can we find that?
Where else? Amazon. Or just Google it. You'll find it.
Awesome. Andy, the content puzzle and the missing piece. Where can we find that?
Same thing, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, pretty much anywhere you find books.
Yep.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Justin.
it.
Thanks, Justin.
Good.
Suddenly I don't have to cough anymore.
Thank you guys. That was great.